Our scripture lesson today comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 1 through 13. And I invite you to stand now in honor of the reading of God's word. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. Friends, this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
Y'all scared me for a minute there. They were singing "I'll Fly Away," and everybody was going, and that piano was hot, and everybody was mouthing words, but nobody was doing anything. And I thought, whoo, Bill Steele's working mighty hard for nobody to be following along. So thank you for joining in with the clapping and taking part in that. That's called worship. I need to thank a lot of folks for this past week. You've got the best staff in North Georgia, I think. All right, Steve, I saw you out there. You got the best staff in North Georgia, I think. That's the SPR chair. How can you thank Donna enough for what she does and what she's done for me? But there's so many others. I really want to take a minute to say Sherry has had me at the hospital to get name badges and all that stuff, and Zach has walked me through all kind of things here in the church and introduced me to people, and Bill has walked me through worship, and it just goes on and on. Robin Deal is sitting right up here, and what a ministry she's got, and not another one like it in all of North Georgia, yay. And I'm excited to be here. This is the first Sunday as the senior pastor of Lawrenceville First United Methodist Church, and I never dreamed that I would be serving such a church. You are a fine church. You're one of the best in North Georgia. There's no doubt about that. I started into ministry a little later and never thought I'd get past 200 or 300 member churches, and then went to Chamblee and thought that would be my peak. And now here I am in Lawrenceville, and it is a good God that I serve. And the bishop had a little something to do with that too. Some people have asked me what's my favorite appointment. You want me to tell you my favorite appointment? Yeah? Okay. It's the one I'm in. I mean, wherever you are, there you are. And it's the one I'm in, except for one. And I knew that appointment was good for me, and I knew that God was there before I got there, and knew that God would stay after I left. I couldn't quite figure out why God would stay in such a place, but I know that he did. Now, I loved Chamblee, and Chamblee's a good church, and I grieve a little at leaving them, just like I will grieve at leaving you when that time comes. But I'm a Methodist preacher. And Methodist preachers, Zach, go where they're sent and serve where they're appointed. And I promised I would do that, and I fully intended to do that. And I did do that, and it was good for me, and I believe that God used it as I served and preached in churches. Because last Sunday, I did not preach. I was at the Allen Memorial United Methodist Church, where my past associate is serving, and heard him preach. And Matt Crow came to that church. He did a pretty good job, didn't you think? Yeah, I like him. I wanted him to stand up out loud and say, "She taught me everything I know." Matt Crow is my third son. And sometimes he's the only one I can go to. Well, my other boys have so many children, you know. What I want to say to you is that I was sitting at my desk when the district superintendent called to tell me that I would be moving. It was a Friday, and I was in the church by myself, thank heavens, and I was working on a sermon. I had no thought of moving. I had checked return. They had checked return. I just had no thought I would move. And the phone rang, and it was the superintendent of the Atlanta-Roswell district, and he said, "Stowe?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You're moving." I said, "What?" And he said, "You are moving." And I said, "Where am I moving?" And he said, "You're going to Lawrenceville first." And I cussed. I didn't cuss because I didn't want to come. I cussed because I was stunned. I just never dreamed of serving a church like this. I just didn't, and I cussed. And I was glad the staff wasn't there to hear me. However, they have heard me in the past do that. And then I began to think about it and get very, very excited. Now, I'm going to tell you why I didn't want to come, because I don't want you mad at me from the beginning. I have come for 12 years and preached Tuesday night of camp meeting. For 12 years. I know. And number one, I didn't want to quit preaching Tuesday night of camp meeting. But number two, you love me, and I know you do. And I come and preach, and you laugh at my jokes, and you hear about my grandchildren, and you let me tell all those wonderful stories. And then I get in my car, and I go home, and you love me. Well, I am home. And I'm the senior pastor of this church. And there are going to be things that I have to say to you that you don't want to hear. And I can't get in my car and go home, and you won't love me anymore. And I didn't want to risk that. I mean, I just really enjoyed being loved and coming and preaching and going home. But we got work to do, folks, and so we're going to get her done. We're going to do that, and it's going to be fine. And I am so excited to be here. Now, I know you can't always trust a district superintendent or a Methodist preacher or a bishop. But I do know that you can always trust God. And as soon as I got over being stunned, I thought, wow, this is going to be so much fun. And I still believe that. I still think there's a lot of work to do, and that I trust God to help us get it done. You see, I preached this very text last Sunday as a goodbye sermon. Now I'm preaching it today as a hello sermon. So if you went to the internet to hear my sermon from not last week but the week before, I know that what you really went there for was to interview me. This sermon will be different. Same text, different sermon. I noticed something in here that, lots of things in here. I've listened to this story all my life. You see, I went to church where I wanted, if I wanted, when I wanted, or not at all. Because my folks didn't go to church. If it was raining, I went to the Presbyterian church. It was closer. After I got about 13 years old, I went to the church where that boy was. I even went to the Greek Orthodox church for a while. His name was Johnny Poulos. But I was in churches enough to know the stories. I was in Sunday school enough to know the stories. And this is a story that is always told. What I didn't really realize until I got older and went to seminary is that this text has us in it. If you look at this text carefully, you can find all of us in it. Philip is one of the disciples you don't hear much about, but in this text he's called out. Now there are people here that do all kind of work, and you don't hear much about it. They do it without ever expecting any pat on the back or any of those things, sort of like Philip. But let's take the crowd. You see, this crowd had gathered much like you've gathered on this Sunday morning. Some of them came to study Jesus, to see what made him tick. Some of them came because they had heard about signs and healings and miracles and what they thought was magic. There's still people that come for that. We need this magic done. Jesus, do this magic. Not like that. He'll be with you in the bad times. He doesn't always manipulate the bad times. You with me? Some people came to learn about him, like some of you do. He went to Philip and he asked Jesus, where do we buy bread for all these people? Now, you might want to notice that he expected Philip to have a response. He expected him to have an answer and go into action. When Jesus comes to us and says, why are my people over there hungry? He expects us to have an answer. Philip answered like many of you would answer. Jeff was at the 9:30 service. He would agree with me. We can't afford to feed those people. What are you thinking? No way we can afford to feed those people. If we spent 6 months' wages, it would not be enough to buy a little for each one of them. We're going to feed them watermelon until they cannot eat anymore. Andrew said, and he almost got it right. Well, here's the problem. They're all hungry. And there's a little boy here that's got 2 fish and 5 barley loaves. And then he messed up. Right then, he dropped his molasses jar. If he had just hushed, he would have been a hero. But no, he had to follow through with, but what is that among so many? That'll never work. You see? Please don't come to me with the problems and no amount of discussion started about a solution. I am not here to fix your problems. You need to know that. They're your problems. They're not my problems. I came to lead you. If I fix your problems, they're going to be your problems again as soon as I walk out the door. If you fix your problems, they'll be fixed. And I'm here to help you, to lead you, to work with you, to shoulder up with you, to get in harness with you, but I'm not here to fix your problems. Do not come to my office and present a problem and walk out. Be ready to have some discussion. Be ready to find a solution. Be ready to go to work. And then I'm in. Thank you. I don't know who said that, but God bless you. Special needs said that. Let that be a lesson to you people. Now, let me translate that into 2017. Some people are willing to give, but surely not enough of them are willing to give. Surely not enough. What Jesus told them is make the people sit down, and he blessed the loaves and the fishes, and he fed 5,000 people, and he'll do it again. He has not changed. He still is capable. If you put in, Jesus is going to put in. It's going to happen every time. You can't outbless Jesus. And you can sacrifice a little, but you can't sacrifice a lot, and you can't sacrifice for long, because he's going to turn that sacrifice into a blessing every single time. And then you got to go to look for another way to sacrifice. When we obey his direction, he will bless us and supply our every need, every need. This text says, when he went and asked Philip, he wanted him to assume the responsibility. And here's the part I missed for so many years. The text says that Jesus already knew what Jesus was going to do. What he didn't know was what Philip was going to do. You with me? See, Jesus already knows what he wants to do at Chamblee. And I didn't misspeak that. Chamblee's nervous. They're getting a new pastor. And I told them last week, you're going to be fine. It's not the preacher. He already knows what he's going to do at Chamblee. But here's the great good news for Lawrenceville. He already knows what he's going to do at Lawrenceville. And it doesn't really matter who the preacher is. He knows what he's going to do at Lawrenceville if only the people of Lawrenceville are willing to go there. Now, I want to ask you to pray for Bill Birch. He's a good man. He's been a good pastor to you. He's done hard work at Lawrenceville that had to be done. And now they've put him in another position where he's going to have to work hard again. While I slid in on Bill Birch's coattail, and we're going to have fun at Lawrenceville. Pray for him. He's done a good job for you. He's been a good pastor to you. And he didn't die. He just went away. He's still alive and breathing and well. And so you need to pray for Bill Birch. He did a good job for you. You pray for him. Jesus already knows what he's going to do at Lawrenceville. I tell you the truth, it is a hard Sunday for me. As exciting as it is, and as much fun as it is to walk to the pulpit, there are 3 sermons to do today, 3 new orders of worship to get used to, a reception where you're going to tell me your name for the 15th time, and I'm still not going to know it, and then camp meeting. I want to do a good job. I want you to walk away saying, she's going to be terrific. I want you to love me. I don't want to make a bad mistake. But I'm going to tell you the truth. It matters to me more that I please Christ than I please you. It matters to me more that someday when I fly away, that Jesus will say, well done. That matters to me. And by the way, I'll Fly Away was terrific. And let me tell you a story about his eyes on the sparrow. This is offline, but you can overhear. When I was a kid, I was at Shingle Roof Camp meeting with all the boys that I wanted to be there with, because I was going to that church at that time, because that's where the boys were, right? It got cold. It was really cold. And I had on baby doll yellow pajamas and was freezing, but I looked good in them. And we were up late, and the counselors were going crazy, and the boys were climbing over rafters to get to the girls' room. And all of a sudden, I heard in the lobby of Shingle Roof Camp meeting this beautiful voice singing, his eyes on the sparrow. And the room got quiet, and the kids settled down. And I wrapped a blanket around me and got warm. And I knew. I don't know how to tell you I knew, but I knew that God had his hand on me. I didn't know how to articulate that. I didn't know that I was going to wind up in ministry. I had no idea. Back then, girls couldn't be pastors, but I knew. And every time I hear that song, it reminds me that God's got me. He's got me. Do whatever you want to. Say whatever you want to. Throw all the rocks you want to, because my God has got me. You can trust God that way. What I'm asking you for is the privilege of being your pastor, even when you don't like what I say. Like, we got a debt that's got to be paid. We can't keep carrying that debt. It's a waste of money. We're going to work, aren't we, Steve? Yes, we are. Steve said we were, and Jeff said we were. We're going to work. I want you to trust me and grant me the privilege of burying your loved ones. I've already talked with Sherry. Sherry and I have had 2 or 3 long, good talks. I'm your pastor. I want to be with you when you're in pain. I want to take some of that off you. I want to do weddings for your children and your grandchildren. I want to baptize your babies. I want you to trust me with your confidences and your secrets, and I promise I will always hold them in my heart. And I will not break those confidences. I cannot tell you what an honor it is to serve you. You're a great church and a great people. And let me tell you, you have absolutely broken the stained glass ceiling for women by allowing me to come here and be your pastor. You have set a precedent. You have brought in and opened the doors and opened the possibilities in the North Georgia Conference, and God bless you for that. You are a good, great church. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. When I met with the SPR committee, I said, what do you want to do? Now, if I got this wrong, just stand up and tell them. She's just lying. They said, we want the inside of our church to look like our community. I said, no, you don't. They said, yeah, we do. And I said, well, they may not look like you. They may not talk like you. They may not be like you. And I'm not going out in the streets and the highways and byways to bring them in if you're going to be mean to them. So you got to be sweet to them. You got to show them the love of Christ. And They buzzed for a little bit and then said, that's what we want to do. And I bowed my head very quietly for just a second and said, praise be to God. What a great church you have brought me to. We go and get them. And we're going to bring them in. And we're going to be sweet to them. And souls are going to be saved. Because I believe that God can do what God said he could do. Because I believe God is with us. And because I believe in Lawrenceville, there's a little boy with 2 fish and 5 loaves. I believe there is a little girl saying, take what I have. I believe there are men and women and boys and girls that are ready to go to work for Christ's sake, and I believe that God will honor that. My granddaughter, now you knew you wasn't going to get by with that one story. My 16-year-old granddaughter, rising junior next year, Rebecca, always been different than all the rest of us. She's kind of like that little pretty girl on the Addams Family. She is 1 point away from perfect scores on her ACTs and her SATs. I don't know where that came from. I have no idea where that came from. She sure didn't get it from her mama and her daddy, I can tell you that. She won one of 60 nationwide scholarships to spend some time at Quantico training with the FBI. She may have to arrest some of her cousins. Her dad was going to take her to the airport, and I called her to talk to her for a bit before she left, and I said, she doesn't know a soul. She's never traveled alone. She's got to get on an airplane by herself. She doesn't even know who's going to be there to meet her. Knows not a soul. And off she goes, and I said, Rebecca, are you scared? She said, yes. I said, well, you don't have to go. I mean, you're not but 16, and you can defer and try again next year. You'll be a little older. And she said, no, I have to go. And I said, why? Why do you feel like you have to go? And I thought surely she'd say, well, everybody would be disappointed in me. But she said this, because I'm representing more than just me. And then she said, Mama, you're going to a new church. And I said, yes. She said, are you scared? And I said, a little. She said, do you have to go? And I said, yes. Not because of a superintendent, not because of a bishop, not because of the vows that I took. I have to go because I'm representing more than me. Lawrenceville, you are representing more than you. Amen.